Now we have a talk by Jakob Margit Wirth, who has been talking with you as a host for a week since Sunday, and I would like to still introduce them to shift the focus from the organizer role and even from the role of person who's trying to create this concept of parasite art or dialogue with others who are using it to Jakob Margit's role as an artist and as a parasite artist. So Jakob Margit Wirth is an artist, activist, and a PhD candidate at the Bauhaus University in Weimar. Their research and practice focuses on parasite art as a subversive methodology to explore how resistance can emerge from positions of complicity and infiltration rather than external opposition. We've been hearing a lot about these core principles with the other practice, and that's why Jakob Margit has identified with the concept of the parasite from Michel Serres, and also with the other people who here and there come up with ways to define it with the word parasite or not. So now we're going to hear a little bit from your presentation and the concepts you've developed, maybe a little deeper than we've had in the mental maps you've shown us before, and then get into dialogue about this.
Okay, thank you for introducing. I feel already a bit weird because I'm again on stage and was talking so much and feel also tired a bit, but it's just 15 minutes. So what I want to share is actually more specifically, since it's also a panel about the question of the aesthetics of the parasite. So is there also a specific form, a specific way of working when you think about the parasite? And that's what I try to carve out. I also touched a little bit in my research upon, but now today it's also something where it comes also more out of the practice than out of reading. So that's often, in general, more my basis, my practice and the practice I'm observing. So I also brought just one example, and out of this example, I draw some potential concepts, which I hope to discuss also with the others and with the whole audience, to think about, is there a certain way how we also even perceive maybe this kind of practice, or is it just embedded in different ways? Yes, and I mean, like what we said, I think it's always, for me, important to position myself in that sense that, of course, like my examples I'm doing is really out of my position of growing up in Germany, being a white person, being read as cis man. That means, of course, I have like certain system I can engage and enter and others not. But mainly I can use my privileges to work within this kind of context. And that's, of course, for every different people and parasites and so on, it's always a different situation. And that's, I think, very important to mention and to think about that in every context, that a parasite is very context specific. So you can't just take the same action, the same aesthetic in different contexts. It depends always on your knowledge, your embeddedness, and your complicity and dependence from, and your vulnerability in the systems you're acting in. Okay, since there's not much time, I go fast. So the first project I want to talk about, title Shifting the Aesthetic Understanding with the Parasite. So it's also the question how you, I come from activism, went into the arts, and how you end up in a way of direct action which is not so eindeutig, which is not so, how is it in English? Unambiguous. So like to have not go in this the way of I have a direct action, I want this aim, and I just use art as a tool. So that's the way I deviated from being an activist and blending into the art. So that's maybe also a standpoint where I'm coming from. And I start with an example where I give only a little bit of context, not much, and then we show some seconds of a video which happened. I brought it because it's from last autumn, so pretty fresh and still ongoing. Some actually have visited it. And it's working again in a real estate context, which is often my field of work, with this big company, which probably all German speaking people know, Signa, which is a big real estate company who owned all the department stores in Germany, so the Karstadt, Galeria Kaufhof. And they this kind of company made a bit this kind of American Austrian dream of a person who went up very fast into like a millionaire. So everybody, he was very, very celebrated, one of the most successful entrepreneur, and then went bankrupt. So also the whole dream in a way failed. And that's a bit the situation whereas now it's like bankrupt since 2 years now, but it still is unclear what actually happens with all the property of Rene Benko, and that's a bit the context where we did an intervention, and I just show some parts of our first intro.
Ja. So, dass auch mal hier erfolgreich investiert haben. Wir erstellen sogenannte digitale Kopien von Renis Benko Weisheiten, Real Estates und seinen auch ganz privaten Gegenständen und bieten die zum Verkauf an. Ja, Rene Benko ist einer der sogenannten erfolgreichsten österreichischen Geschäftsmänner, wurde bekannt letztlich in den letzten 10 Jahren durch vor allem Immobilienhandel und hat es eben geschafft, von Innsbruck, einem kleinen Unternehmen, zu einem fast globalen Player mit Gebäuden wie dem Chrysler Building, KDW, eben die Alte Akademie oder Karstadt Galerie Kaufhof.
Öffentlichkeit, um Sie alle vorzubereiten, einzuladen und unser Geschäftsmodell vorzustellen. Und heute sind Sie ja exklusiv dabei für unser, sagen wir mal, zweites Opening oder unser richtiges Opening.
Viele haben wahrscheinlich schon von Signa gehört oder Rene Benko, dem Immobilieninvestor, der plötzlich ganz viel investiert hat und jetzt grandios gescheitert ist, bankrott gegangen ist und eine Welt übrig gelassen hat mit 27 Milliarden Schulden und Forderungen, die an ihn gestellt werden. Und die Insolvenzverwaltung, die kommt nicht so wirklich voran. Also das ist ein Geflecht von über 1000 Firmen, da passiert nichts. Und dann haben wir uns gedacht, okay, wie können wir jetzt das selbst in die Hand nehmen? Und haben deswegen jetzt ein Startup gegründet, um sich zu fragen, wie kann man aus letztlich so einem Konkurs letztlich ein Geschäftsmodell machen, was aber letztlich die Gläubiger am Ende zurückbezahlt.
Genau, und wir sind, da wir ein junges Unternehmen sind, da wir modern sind, haben wir für unser Geschäftsmodell auf Technik gesetzt und wir arbeiten nicht mit Beton oder mit Gegenständen, wie das vielleicht die Immobilienverwaltung von der Signa tun, sondern wir setzen auf NFTs. Ich weiß nicht, ob einige, die Jüngeren unter Ihnen werden das wahrscheinlich kennen.
It's I don't want to. It's a lot of What did happen? Maybe to explain 2 or 3 more sentences. We created this kind of startup, Collapse Collection, which has the mission to make money out of the failured narratives of companies in a way. And the first case was Rene Benko, like this Signa. So what we did in a way, we used the story because Rene Benko was such a famous figure and used the narratives and put them somehow in NFTs. So, and then sold the NFTs in a way to regain money, which we then paid back to the people who lost money. So that's a bit like this logic of the startup. And of course, as a startup, you also keep some money yourself and the rest is forwarded. And an important part is, of course, when some of you would now buy an NFT, you have yourself to think of who of the people who have lost money should get the money back. That's how, in a way, you have to then become complicit in the whole money system because you have to think, oh, do I want to give it to Deutsche Bank or to the Austrian state or whatever? And then, of course, in the different places. Of course, you have the whole trading system. You have also like real objects from Rene Benko. So, of course, when you have NFTs, the important part is that you have a good narrative and a believable narrative because that's what creates value. And that's again also the logic of the real estate company because Rene Benko managed to create a nice, incredible narrative around his buildings that made them so precious in a way. And so that's the same logic we use now for all the different kinds of things. And of course, for that, we also had to create authenticity because it's about the aura in a way of Rene Benko, what we're selling and what also, so for that we needed to load in a way also the goods with a certain kind of authenticity, and that we did by picking real objects from Rene Benko's villa when he had an auction. So also here like a few seconds maybe from the journey to the Lago di Garda. It's not so easy to understand. So, I mean, here's the villa. So it's also, in a way, with this journey, loading the object somehow with this kind of aura of Benko. Yes, like that's how somehow all the goods and objects arrived to Munich in this kind of whole collection. We had like this kind of store where also you see like people. We appeared as a startup, which is also a strategy which works in Munich a bit better. So it's about this kind of narrative. We take the problem in our hands, so we can offer a solution for the problem that people lost money, and then like people coming from all different backgrounds discussing what to do. We also overnight entered actually we were in front of the Baustelle, like the construction side of Rene Benko. So overnight we also opened the fence and opened the left side, the store, actually inside the construction site. So in a way we squatted temporarily the place, so you in a way traded the NFTs on the ground of Rene Benko. Also in a way thinking the threshold, how you work with that, and then people entered, and we had of course had this kind of Absperrung, the red line, so it looked nice and possible and legal, of course, and yeah, and then of course you have all this kind of confrontation from people who lost money, from people who are very angry of Benko, from people who were advisors of Benko. There came billionaires also in a way who offered us we should present this whole startup to this kind of rich family. They would like it because they used to invest in Benko. So you have these different shifts of narrative from different perspectives. Also people who lived who lived around the streets there, who know the construction site very well, who were very angry. So you have these kind of people condensed, then investing in like thinking about the NFTs. And also, I mean, when I was in Cisano, there, in the Lago di Garda, there also people traveled, you know, like 2,000 kilometers to get a cushion, like, or to get a painting. So you have really, you know, they wanted some part of the top in a way. It's like it's symbolizing the success of our society and how can I appropriate one part and get it into my home. So it was very interesting to see all the dynamics, but it came also from his English teacher to, you know, like just people who were interested in, and also to see which objects got very high. So for example, to clean your shoes, the thing got a couple of thousands, because I think it's maybe also like trying to, you know, like compensate and process maybe your anger you have on this person. Then of course we created a website where you have then also these kind of 3 collections, which also stand for the different aspects of Rene Benko's empire in a way. So there are the different narratives, like a dishwasher dream, of course telling this story of success. And so every NFT had their own story of including somehow the frictions, the critique of this kind of company, but in slightly that way that it's still passing in a way as a real one. Then here the everyday essentials, that's all the goods we got from Benko, and there we have also the reference to the Parasite, you know, like the pantry. We went to the pantry of Rene Benko, got it, and now we sell them as NFTs. And also this ketchup, you know, everybody has it at home. So in a way you have suddenly a closeness to this kind of privileged situation. Yeah, so that's, and then of course they're doing a lot of research. That's all the depth from the different actors. Yeah, but just to get a notion. And of course you also have this kind of redistributing effect that, or like that's what it plays with a bit. It plays around the corner, the Robin Hood story, by collecting money to compensate something what the state or the structures are failing to do. Since 3 years it's bankrupt and nobody saw any money. So that's like this kind of story. I make it short because I wanted to have also now a second of combining it with the arguments for actually the new perspective on the aesthetics. It's a bit, the project's a bit, has so many sides, but maybe come into discussion on it. But now the last 5 minutes I want to talk about different parts of the aesthetic I find appearing in different artistic works who work in this kind of subversive direct action ambiguity. So on the left side, when we start, is like I claim that it's a different type of aesthetic regime that these works are working. It's not defined through the visual, the craft, or the design. These kind of artworks. It's also not defined through the institutions. So where is it exhibited or not, and also not through what you also sometimes have through the identity of an artist. An artist was doing it for that reason. It's like a certain aesthetic, and so it's not through these kind of maybe often used categories to think about what's an aesthetic practice. But what is very crucial is this field and context. So it's really the aesthetic moment, what I also mentioned on last Sunday, is really happening in the action itself. It's in the pedestrian zone when people come in who want to invest, other people come in and criticize, and you create this situation of ambiguity, you create this situation of trouble, of irritation, and that's like this kind of moment is for me, that's defining its aesthetic practice, not how it looks like, and it looks very different in every different system we are working in. So it's really about this kind of production of irritation or trouble. That's what it tries to do, to really get in this kind of fabric of opinions, and that's really like a delicate process. When you're too clear, then you drop out and you become just the irony, or when you're too serious, then in a way you're only complicit. So that's a bit this kind of, again, this border situation. So it's this kind of interruption without destroying. It's this really difficult, or like also not like maybe we know from people like Yes Men, they work, or like other groups, Zentrum für politische Schönheit, they work with this revealing moment. So you reveal, and through this friction you create then like a meaning. But it's this project, the Parasite, wants to survive, so it stays in this position. So it's not about revealing it, because the revealing would also be the heroic figure. The Parasite stays undercover in a way, and is not revealing. And how you manage to create this situation where the irritation and trouble stays somehow present, until, of course, like what we had heard also last Sunday in different talks, that it's always mutating. It's very fast. You have also to move again because the niche is closing, and you have to find a new system, a new gap. Then that's maybe, since the time is forward, we can then I go maybe from this kind of irritation. It's about this kind of threshold instead of opposition. So it really tries to get in all these kind of in the middle position. So between good and evil, or like we had this kind of moral argument, like this kind of thing, you can say, okay, is it now confirming this narrative of neoliberal promise of solving a situation, or is it really showcasting, mirroring the situation how it is? So that's a bit, it's always on this kind of balance, or between critique and affirmation, and fiction and reality. So it's, for me, it's important. It's a startup. You can buy the stuff that's real. So you can get your wallet, you can get your cryptocurrency, and you buy it. So it has to be there. But then, of course, the way how it's processed is a totally different one as a usual startup. And the same, the question, of what you have often in the arts, autonomy or dependence. So it's always again maneuvering on this kind of thresholds. And I mean, it's what is the time? 1 minute overtime. Okay, so this kind of production of the boundary, we might talk also later upon, and of course it has these different tactics and forms we also talked about last week, like camouflage, passing, redistribution, eating at somebody's place. That's something what Post Brothers also pointed out in the workshop he gave. So that's just to think about, okay, how we can grasp this kind of practice and offer one understanding. So now then I give the mic. Thank you.